Create That Life Legacy Designers, Amber Prosia here. Welcome to episode number 16 of the Parenting Biz Podcast, coming to you every single Monday. Now let's chat with this week's featured guest, Lee Chapman. Lee, are you ready to inform us on your journey of how you plotted the life you've always wanted for yourself and your family?
I certainly am. I'm ready and raring to go.
Love it. Thanks, Lee. Lee Chapman is the owner of SA Gold Traders, leader in business wealth generation, and a motivational speaker who was born and raised in rural South Australia. Lee and his beautiful wife, Belinda, started SA Gold Traders in 2010, and in their second year turned over $3.2 million in business. In the process, they became the largest Perth mint distributor in South Australia by volume. From there, they kept going and have broken business records in Australia and New Zealand. Lee's mission is now to help others become the best they can be. His passion is to help men become better fathers. This will produce great community leaders and family role models. Therefore, Lee shines when he teaches men and women how to build relationships with a flair to recharge men. Lee, please take a minute to fill in any gaps from that intro and give us a little glimpse of your own personal life.
That sounds fantastic. When I hear my story like that, I thought, I'm so ready to listen to this guy, and then I realise it's me.
We are super excited to have you here, Lee.
I think you've got everything nailed down, so yeah, that sounds
cool.
fantastic.
I'll continue on, no problem. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for sharing all of your expertise with us today. We're really honored to have you on the show. As you are aware, our listeners are parents or parents-to-be that realize ownership is key to not only to our parenting or business, but in life in general. And along that parenting journey, we can lose sight of that. However, if we focus on life as a game, a sport, or an activity, not only can we learn to let go easier, but we can also gain strength from our mistakes and design our core focus to be one of laughter, joy, and most importantly, having fun. Just like a 5-year-old kid in the sandbox. So this week, our entire interview will be in the wilderness with our leader and survivor skill expert, Lee Chapman. Welcome to our adventure called All the Good Men Are Alive. Now, as you're all aware, this is just an analogy and we can create and design our lives any way we want. Lee, this was your chosen activity, so let's go through your daily activities and how you make it with your life and expertise. But before we begin, I would love for you to explain to our audience what raising real men is. How did it come about? And please elaborate what the difference is between a male and a man.
Oh, wow. It's. I think you've had me on the show. I just want to say it is a massive, massive topic. And I guess I just took it for granted that I came from a family where both my parents were married and my grandparents. And literally, I came from a community where there wasn't any such thing as divorce. I mean, the first notion that I ever had was a blended family. When one of the kids I went to school with, his mother died from MS, and the father got remarried, and that was really the first blended family I ever came across. And then I grew up in the country, learning skills and so forth. And I guess the first part I remember being a youngster was going to a debutante ball where the teenagers of the area, we were paired up with a girl of a similar age, and we all got gussied up and we went to this ball, and it was a coming of age to society or community recognizing that you weren't a child anymore, that you were a young adult, and there were certain responsibilities to go with that. And a lot of those kids that I went to school with have gone on to do great things. And I think that's because they had a male and a female initiation, which in the Western world, we just don't seem to have anymore. And I think that's what leads to a lot of the problems that we have in society now. And I guess it really triggered me to do something, because the biggest difference between men and women, I guess, is that women, when girls go through puberty, they start getting their menstrual cycle, they start growing breasts, and there's that real shift where they go with their mum to buy their first bra or sanitary pads, and there's that shift to become a woman. Whereas boys don't have that. If they don't get called into masculinity, they'll always act like a boy, even when they're an adult. If something goes wrong, they'll go straight back to that 12-year-old hissy fit, because they haven't been called to masculinity. And very few families now have a male role model that boys can learn how to be a man. And then women say, well, where have all the good men gone? It's not that they're gone. It's just they haven't got anyone to follow. I mean, are you going to base a man on being a man is kicking a football? Is that being a man? Is watching someone like Shane Warne, is that, being a good cricketer? Is that a good male role model? I don't know. So that's what really started me onto this whole journey of teaching men etiquette, how to speak to women, what's to be expected, how to do survival skills, what to be expected of you as a young male in society and in a family.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, Lee. I really appreciate that. What is your definition between the difference between the male and a man?
Okay. I personally, I had a bit of a moment. I'll share it with you. I was having a really bad week. I had my girlfriend cheat on me. I caught my girlfriend cheating on me. My grandfather had just passed away. I was in a really bad job I hated. I was driving an old red VB Commodore. I was working a job that I really didn't like. I was on my way home. I had to pull into a service station to get fuel, and I had $5 to my name. And I pulled into this service station, and as I went through the ashtray to find exactly $5 worth of change out of the apple and cinnamon scented dust in the ashtray, I felt completely poverty stricken. And I cursed God, and I said some words I won't say on this show, but I walked into the service station, and I remember I was 21. I felt so incredibly judged, and all these people behind me watched as I was putting these coins across the counter. And just as I came out, there was this beautiful Ford Falcon XB coupe. I mean, I'm part Bogan, so I've got this beautiful metallic blue XB Ford Falcon coupe, a big thumping 351 V8, and I've always wanted one. And I just cursed God, like, could you make my day anywhere? I mean, can you rub my face in it anymore? And as I pulled into the service around this beautiful car, the guy that owned that car opened up the door, and I thought, oh, you so-and-so. And he pulls his wheelchair out across his lap and puts it next to his car and pulls himself out awkwardly into the wheelchair. And when you have one of those smack in the head moments, I know I'm sure you've had one, but I had a blinding flash of the obvious. I realized at that point that I didn't know that guy. I didn't know his background. I don't know how he got the car. I don't know if he was born paraplegic or he had an accident. I don't know. I never met him. I never talked to him. But I realized that at that point that everything where I was my fault. I was the one that took that job. I was the one that went out with that girl. I was the one that was driving that car. I was the one that had the 2 Visa cards maxed out. Everything was my circumstances. And when I realized it was me, that's when I became a man, when I actually took responsibility for my life from that second on. And that's the difference between a man and a male. You can be male, and when you turn 18, the government and the powers that be say you can be judged as an adult, but you do not become a man until you physically take responsibility for your life. And the same as a woman. You don't become a woman just because you start having a menstrual cycle and you turn 18. You become a woman the very second that you take responsibility for your actions.
Fantastic. Thanks for that clarification. I think it's a great leeway into our survival elements. So our first survival element of today is finding and purifying water, because one of the main essentials for survival is water. Now, the human body is made up of 60% of water, and it requires constant hydration. I know there's other essential survival necessities like food and shelter and so forth, but let's just stick with water for today.
Sure.
What would you say in a relationship is equivalent to the essential of water when we're trying to stay alive?
Okay. Men and women, if you want to use that analogy, what fills men tanks and fills a woman's tank, you're two different types of water. It's almost like sparkling mineral water and just plain water. Men get their tanks filled when you're telling them they're doing a good job, that you really respect what he does. That really fills a man's tank. What fills a woman's tank is telling her that she's beautiful every day, that she has worth, that she's really special. Telling her that every day fills her tank. I mean, if you don't tell your wife every day that she is beautiful, no matter what she's got going on, whether she's got a headache, like she's just, you value her as a prized rose. If you do not do that, she will shrivel and die, or she'll go and get water from someone else.
Well said. Yep, definitely. So from your experience, and especially working with couples and working with men in particular and raising real men, but also with your own wife too, and just like in water and survival where you have the choice to purify it if you're not in a location that is already having, fresh crystal water from the mountains, what would be some great tips on how to improve, let's say, our communication? Because that's pretty much one of the very first foundations for any relationship to work. What would you recommend, and how would you suggest for us to increase?
I guess communication is the key. I guess the biggest thing we have to remember is that men and women think differently. You can say the same thing to a woman and the same thing to a man, and they both have two different meanings. The best thing is to sit down. Well, what I teach is to sit down with your partner and say, look, these are the values and the things that I value, and your spouse needs to say, well, these are the things that I respect and I value, and are they compatible? Do they match? Because water will mix with water, salt water will mix with fresh water eventually, but oil and water won't mix. So a lot of people get into relationships based on attraction and get into things way too fast, and then get into a situation where, oh no, now we're having a kid, and then the marriage split, the relationship splits up because people race in way too quickly before actually sitting down and say, well, okay, how can we purify our ideas so they match and we're both going in the same direction? Because a lot of people don't. They just race in, and you see, and society's got a lot of blame to it. You watch these Married at First shows, rubbish on TV, and Love Island and all this sort of stuff, and it's not based on any substance whatsoever. And then you get kids that watching TV think, oh, well, that's how life's like. Mm-hmm. And it's not. It's complete and utter garbage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you even said at the beginning about taking ownership, and that's even for a woman or a male, because that could be the same thing as, well, have you actually even thought about what your own values are? So
yeah, that's right.
Before you even get into a relationship, how
that's
can
right.
you actually articulate it?
That's right. A woman's character is built on who she is, not by the clothes that she wears or the money in her purse.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That goes into our next element of building a wilderness shelter from scratch. Because if you've ever had to spend the night in the wilderness, you'd want something between you and that wilderness.
That's right.
What elements do you recommend a couple to shelter from others so that they can focus on their own wilderness creation?
Sure. When you look at, if you go outside in the wilderness, you watch Bear Grylls, you watch any of these shows, the first thing they talk about is shelter. You will die from hypothermia way faster than you're going to die from lack of water or lack of food. So in a relationship, you would take that over to a relationship analogy. Your home has to be your sanctuary. There has to be rules in your place where, this is what we do at home. We come home at mealtime, we turn the phones off. This is our sanctuary. This is our shelter. It's when you spend time with the kids, you listen to their day, you listen to your spouse's day, and you discuss it over a meal, and nothing gets in during that period. That is your shelter. And it doesn't matter what phone call happens, you just don't answer it. Phones are off, mobile phones are down. This is what goes on. And then you can carry that shelter on later on where you as parents, there's discussions that you have to have with little ears can't listen to. That's your secondary shelter that you have in the bedroom where you talk about, or the lounge room after the kids have gone to sleep and you've had a coffee and you sit down and work out what you want to say. But, some things, that's your secondary shelter. But your primary shelter has to be your home. And you have to make rules around it, say what's discussed, what's not, what's appropriate. I mean, as women, because women are more emotional, there's a double-edged sword because they can be more connected with other women because they're just naturally wired that way. But the downside is they can be very, very gossipy, and gossip can be very harming. And you can bring that gossip home to your house, and you think, well, why does what's happening in Julie's life affect why bring that into the house. Like if I went hunting and if I hunted a fresh animal, it's fresh meat. If I found a dead kangaroo on the side of the road that's been there for 3 days, I wouldn't bring that home to eat because that's like gossip. You don't bring that into your house. It doesn't serve you, your partner, or your whatsoever. And a couple of times I've had to pull my wife aside and said, well, but how does worrying about what Julie's doing, unless you're helping Julie, but if you're just gossiping, bringing that home and having that on your shoulders, how does that help our household?
I love that analogy. That is great.
I said, well, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't at all. And it's
But
really about minding your own business, right? It doesn't matter what
yeah,
other
that's
people
right.
think of you.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter what other people are doing. It's only focusing on what's going on in your shelter.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So what about, because it does happen, unfortunately, is confrontation. And just like when things get worse, and you're in the wilderness, for example, freezing temperatures could drop, or maybe it's sweltering heat, or there's deep snow or heavy rains, things that are out of your control. How do you recommend couples to handle that confrontation together as a team?
Well, I guess you've always got to allow, and unfortunately a lot of people don't, you always have to allow for the X factor. The X factor is something you can't see, but it's out there. It could be a family member dying. It could be you lose your job. It could be any number of things, but you have to be prepared for it. And I mean, Belinda and I, we're the same as everyone else. You have calamities that happen in your life, but it's how you deal with them that matters, not what the actual calamity is. It's how you navigate your way around it and move on, rather than just shut down, lay down and die. I mean, we've all gone through places where we've lost our job, or we've had a sudden death in the family, and so forth. It doesn't mean you just go and take up drug addiction or alcoholism. It's just you go, oh, okay, just have to stop, reevaluate what we're doing, and move around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope you don't mind this next question. It might be a little bit personal, so if you don't feel comfortable answering it,
No.
you don't have to. But you and Belinda work together as well. So you guys also run a business together, and then also obviously run a family at home. How do you
Yes.
guys handle possibly work confrontation? Is that brought home, or is there a rule that you guys have set up that you don't bring that home, or how does that work?
Well, when Belinda and I first got together, I basically was in a long-term relationship that failed, and I said to Belinda when we first got together, I said, look, I think you're great. I think our relationship could be really great. I said, but I'm in the Army Reserve. I'm from the country. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm extremely loyal. Um, I hate football, hate cricket, all that sort of stuff. But I need someone to be a companion. If you can't be that, let me know now, because I don't want to waste another 5 or 6 years in a relationship and have it go sideways again.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, well, that sounds okay. And the first rule we made is that we never, ever go to bed angry. So if you've got something to say it, because you don't let it fester. We just don't. We've never had a rip roaring argument. It's just we've been coming up this year 18 years married, plus the 6 years before we got married, but apparently they don't count, which I think is a real rip off. But anyway, so we got 18 years this year, and we've never had a plate throwing, cup throwing, knife throwing argument. And at work, while at work, we just do the same as literally at home. If something's wrong, we talk about it right there and then and move on. It doesn't fester. It's just dealt with and move on.
Brilliant. And honestly, Mick and I are exactly the same. Like, we can't even fathom in our head of arguing, screaming at each other. It just would never get to that point. It's like, why would you want to treat the person that you supposedly love, that you spend the rest of your life with, like that? It's just,
I mean, I know it's crazy. I mean, I know of people, and I knew this one couple, and the female in the relationship would purposely make trouble just so they could have arguments, just so they could have great makeup sex. And I'm thinking that's just insane.
That is insane, definitely.
But she goes, it works. So she would do it all. Eventually, the relationship broke down. But that was her mentality. I'm going, no, you're coming from the wrong angle, man. It just drives me nuts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, crazy.
I was gonna wonder though, because how many children do you and Belinda have now?
Two that I know of.
Okay, cool. How
Yeah,
does no? That's good. That's good. At least you can count them. That's good.
yeah. Mitchell's going 14, and Holly's she's 11 going on 18. She's growing up too quick.
Oh yeah, definitely time's flying. I can't believe it's
Oh,
already May. It's going by
I
very
know,
fast.
it's crazy.
How do you think your communication, your relationship with Belinda has actually impacted your children?
Um, I'd say kids are great. They don't necessarily do what you tell them, but they take in what they see. So um, I I teach Mitchell exactly what I do with Belinda. So I'll bring flowers home for Belinda, not for any particular reason, just because I want to. So he might not go, oh, what are you buying those for, Dad? But he goes, oh, so you give flowers. Now, I've also spoken to our kids about the five love languages because, you know, I guess the problem I had when I was younger is in my teens is I would go and give girls what I thought was their love language, and it was the completely wrong love language. And then I ended up thinking, well, she's such an ungrateful woman. It's not that. It's just not that she wasn't in it wrong. It's just I wasn't filling her tank in the way that I get my tank filled.
Mm-hmm.
So I take Mitchell um, out to tea. We go out to tea as a family, and I pull back the chair for Belinda, and my daughter as well. So and then I take my daughter out on daddy-daughter date days, and I treat her the way that she's expected a young male to treat her. If she comes across a young guy that won't open the door for her, or sit down and pull a chair out for her at a restaurant, she's realised, well, he's not up to my standard. Like he's not. This is what I expect of a guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have my son. He takes Belinda out on a date, so he can learn how to. I mean, he can't drive the car yet, but he gets dressed up and he goes out with mum and he pulls out the chair for her, and that teaches, giving him practice on how to treat a lady when he starts dating.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, because if you don't do it, where else are they going to learn it?
Absolutely. And the home is where your prime learning is. So
Exactly.
absolutely, you got to be top of that. Fantastic. Let's move into the next element, which is starting a fire without a light. So fire is useful in any survival scenarios and can be a lifesaver in many of them. Just
Yep.
like in a relationship, we can get so comfortable that we forget about what sparked our relationship from the beginning in the first place. Especially when we're parents or newbies, or we're not parents yet, but we're thinking about having children. You still have to make an effort. What's your thoughts on that?
That's right. If to use the analogy, I mean, we live in a world that's so microwave, zip blocked, instant gratification, um, and with relationships, they're much the same. Getting back to you seeing that stuff on television with Love Island and Married at First Sight and all this sort of stuff, they make it sound you instantly fall in love with someone like you get a cigarette lighter and you instantly light a fire. That's not the case. If you don't just walk up into a bar and see some girl and walk up to her and say, "Oh, how about it?" You probably get a slap in the face, right?
Yeah.
It's just you don't do that. You see someone, you say, "Oh, gee, you might know a girl in the office," and you get to know and say, pay her a few compliments and ask her out for a drink, and goes from there. And you might share the same interest and share a meal and have a chat to each other, and it either works out or it doesn't. And it's the same as building a fire from scratch without matches. You've got to have the right wood. You've got to sit there and you've got to have the right bow on the drill to get the flame going. You've got to put a bit of effort into it before you start to get some smoke and pull that little ember up and gently blow that little ember until it slowly turns into a flame. And the reason I take guys out and teach them this is say, well, if you can build a fire from nothing, you can also do that in a relationship. It's not instant. It takes time to build a fantastic relationship. Once that you get that fire going, you've got to keep putting fuel into it, otherwise it dies. It's the same with a marriage. If you don't go out on regular date days, it's going to die. You've got to keep that fire going, but you've got to build it up slowly. Anything that happens quickly dies very quickly. Like an explosion goes bang very quick, but also dies down very fast. And that's what a lot of relationships we see on television are all about. Oh, incredible, spark my light, my fire, passion. But that might be great for 2 minutes, but it doesn't last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And also to give, our listeners some hope as well, even if it has possibly died, it doesn't mean it's always over. You can
No,
start it up again, right?
that's
So
right.
so
Exactly.
sorry, go ahead.
That's right. So you can say, well, okay. And look, it's very easy to get relationships. So like you get life, you get kids, you get work, and you're just working and you come home, have tea, go to sleep, get up, go to work, come home, have tea, go to sleep, and you just feel like Groundhog Day. And you think, well, hang on, if you need to keep that fire going, you need to make regular days in your diary that are either family days or you and your spouse days, and got to have date days to go out and do the things that you do when you were first dating, whether that be walks on the beach, going to your four-wheel drive club, fishing, or going to the movies, or whatever it is that floated your boat in the first place. It's not it's not a may do, it's a must. It has, if you want a good relationship, it's a must. You have to do it. And
Absolutely.
if you don't put it in your diary, it won't happen. You need to make regular date days. I mean, I did one the other day. Belinda, I just because she was, I know, with holidays and kids and all sort of stuff, and I just organised my brother and his spouse to come around and look after the kids, and I organised to go out to our favourite restaurant. And Belinda loved the surprise. I said, "Oh, no cooking for you tonight. We're going out."
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really does make a difference, because then you actually get to see from that perspective of just you saw your partner that was maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed or a little bit of flooding and just drowning, and you just needed to lift her up, get some breath of fresh air. And I
That's right.
always believe, especially like we're about to be new parents, but even with that, we still have to make us as number one. Like, yes, the kids are there and we want to teach that, but we have to make sure that we're still looking after ourselves and as a couple, and that we're on this journey together. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important. I love that you do that, Lee. That's really
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah. When we first had kids,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably one of the biggest strains, because it is a big change in the family, and the way that the male and female brain change as soon as you have a kid, like it's literally instant,
Mm-hmm.
and the expectations that happen with that, um, it can be put a lot of strain on a relationship, because the woman, it's all about. Straight away, well, I've just given birth to this being that now I'm ultimately responsible for, and I've got to breastfeed and look after and all this sort of thing, because men can't breastfeed. So, and then instantly as a guy, there's a little chip in his head that switches over. It says, oh crap, now I'm responsible for a wife and now a kid. And a man just thinks, well, I can't breastfeed, but I can work more hours to get more money coming in, because now we've got this kid, and then that puts pressure on, oh, my husband's always at home and I'm here by myself. So you got to really sit down and work out, okay, how are we going to balance this?
Mm-hmm.
Because it does put a lot of pressure on a marriage, especially
Yeah.
when yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, probably one thing that like we're really grateful for already is that we've already talked about that, and just taking
Yep.
it as day by day. That's our motto, really.
Yep.
And just being adaptable and knowing if anything's creeping up on either one of us, that we can actually openly say it to each other, and
Yeah.
just go with adjustments, because it is a newborn, and it's going to be a little bit it's going to be completely different than what we're living right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it is all about that communication, like you said from the beginning. Communication is key.
Yeah,
So
that's right. I mean, especially when newborn, I felt like I was running around with Batman. I should have had a utility belt with, with tissues and bum wipes and eardrops, and what we did notice is the manners went straight out the window. So Belinda wouldn't say, "Can you please get me the tissues?" Like, "Get me the tissues now!" And I was thinking, "Oh, you rude bloody so and so." And it wasn't. It's just because no, I need tissues now. Like I haven't got time for manners.
yeah.
And I honestly just felt like I just needed a utility belt with, I should have actually made them and sold them on the internet. I probably made $1 million by now.
Yeah, easily. And that would have been so awesome if you did him as Batman too.
Yeah, that's right.
I would
That's
love
right.
it. I love Marvel, so I think I'm like, oh, that would be amazing to have.
Oh, just yeah, you need it. Your first aid kit goes from just having band-aids and Panadol to every potion under the sun when you have kids. It's great.
Amazing. Thanks for the tips for that. I'll
Yeah,
definitely
that's
stock
right.
up.
Yeah,
Definitely
that's right.
stock up. So let's move actually into survival signals, which is our
Sure.
final element. And assuming you are in a survival situation where rescue is desirable, one must understand the basics of singling. Singling, sorry. Singling is the art of drawing attention to oneself. And this is the same in a relationship or business partnership, that you actually need to listen or see the signs of SOS from your partner that might be giving out. What are some tips would you share with us on helping us to see or hear the warning signs before it gets to full-blown flares going off?
Oh, well, that's great. I mean, for Belinda and I highly recommend that your listeners actually go out. I think it's about $29 now. That you get the Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. He's no relation to me, but I wish he was. But anyway, if you go and get that book on, and you realise what your partner's love language is, that no matter what's going on, if you keep feeding that, you won't have to get to the signal stage. You won't have to start staring up flare guns. Your partner will realise, oh well, you haven't been four-wheel driving for a while, and I know that really floats your boat, having some alone time. If you start making dates in your diary for your partner's whatever float their boat button is, you won't have to get to the signalling stage. But I mean, I can tell when Belinda's starting to get short with the kids, when she's just not her normal self, and thinking, oh, okay, you need some us time. The kids are starting to drive you mental. School's driving you. You're sick of going to parent meetings and all that sort of just normal life stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can read the signals. I can tell you're getting a bit antsy. You're not going to say it, but I can sense it, mm-hmm. and that's when you do something. And every relationship's different, but you really need to sit down with your partner and say, hey, look, what signals do you have? And we've even got a signal when we go to a party and Belinda's getting tired or the kids are getting a bit crazy or whatever. We've got a signal between us that let each other know that, okay, it's time to pull the pin, and we'll leave. So I'll go. Belinda said, "Oh, did you get that charm bracelet sent off to the work?" I was just thinking off the top of my head. Sorry to interrupt. Did you get that charm bracelet sent off? Belinda, she'll either say yes or no, and that is our trigger. If she says yes, that's time to go. If she goes no, it means she wants to stay a bit longer.
Yep, and you have to have it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's you've got to come up with your own code words, but you've really got to know your partner, know what their love language is, and watch the signs accordingly. Because if it gets to the point where she's sobbing in the corner, I think, we haven't left it for a little while, or or your husband's pacing up and down the house and he's not saying anything. It's because he probably needs to go out and do something that he used to love, whether it be hunting, fishing, or you're going out with the boys, or when it was the last time he went out with some of his mates.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. And what I'll do is I'll put that link in the show notes as well for the 5 Love Languages, because it's a phenomenal book.
It's an awesome book.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal book.
Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus is another good one.
Okay, I'll add that in there. I haven't read that one myself. I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah.
But 5 Love Languages, I read that actually probably like a decade ago, and it really made a huge difference.
And he's also written one for kids as well.
Oh, has he?
Oh yeah, because if your kids have different love languages, and we got two kids, and you can't do the same disciplinary action on one kid if they've got different personality styles. My son, he's very his love language is physical touch. So if you say, oh, there's no hugs from mum, he'll just literally shrivel up and die. Whereas my daughter, if you say you can't go on the iPad, she'll go, fine, I'll get my own iPad. Right, but if you say, honey, you're not allowed. Her love language is words of affirmation. So she likes being seen. She likes dance. She likes being up on stage. If you say to my daughter, honey, look, just because you did that, your punishment is there won't be any dance recitals or calisthenics this week. Oh man, it's like cutting off her leg. Yeah. So it's get the 5 love languages for kids as well.
I will. I'll actually grab that one. So I'll put all 3 of those books in the show notes for everyone, so you guys can just click on the link and get it. I was also wondering, because I know we've talked about the partner and understanding the warning signs for them, but how can we also see it for ourselves?
I guess if you start to know what your true self is. As you get a bit older, you think, well, what are the things that I really enjoy? What are the things I really excel at? What are the things that I naturally find easy to do and I like to do? And when I'm not doing those, I start to feel withdrawn, depressed, irritable. that's when you're thinking, well, hang on, why do I feel that way? Oh, that's right. It's because I'm working 60 hours a week in a job that I hate. I need to go out and go fishing like I used to on the weekends, or wood carving or knitting or whatever, whatever it is that you used to like to do that you find relaxing, or that is your skill set. You need to move back towards that. The biggest reason we have depression in this country or in this Western hemisphere is because people are so focused on what they are told to do, not what they're good at. So as they get further and further away, that depression gets wider and wider and wider. And some people never come back to it. It's when you get less depressed when you're doing what you love, and you get more depressed when you go away from the things that you love.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well, Lee, what we'll do today is we'll actually wrap up today's Outback experience before we head back into the city, though. Would there be anything you'd like to add?
Oh, anything I'd like to add?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a big. It's such a big topic. It's what I'm trying to do is pretty immense, and there's so many different facets to it. But I just want to say that with men and women, if you can imagine a three-legged stool, and each leg has a different role to play, and if you have skills in life, and then you have the other leg is urban skills and your mentality of how to get around in life, and the third leg is relationship mastery. If you don't have all those legs even, or one of those legs missing, you'll fall over. So it doesn't matter if you're male or female. If you're really good mentally and you're great at relationships, but you've got no life skills, you'll fall over.
Yeah.
And if you've got life skills, you know how to make money. You might be really good at business, and you might be great at making money, and you might have the great mentality of belief in yourself. But if you've got no relationship skills, it'll fall over because you can't relate. You're so head down, bum up, making money that you don't allow for any relationship happens. You'll end up tired, broken, and alone. So the mastery is to work on all three.
And is there any, do you actually do coaching as well, or anything that we
I do some coaching. I'm a bit selective on the coaching I do, but I do a little bit of coaching, relationship coaching. But at the moment, I'm doing seminars here in Adelaide on a monthly basis for men and women wanting to sell in business, and then I do camps where I actually take guys out in the wilderness and teach them skills and life skills, and actually teach them how to be better men in all aspects of life. Phenomenal. But I do coach. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure our listeners are wondering, how the heck can they get in touch with you, and how could we attend a seminar or go out to the camp with you as well? So if you could just share with us, and I'll put all the details in the show notes as well.
Sure. If you go to my website, mrleechapman.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Lee Chapman. You'll find me on Facebook. I pretty much live there. And you can email me at info@mrleechapman.com. So if you, just send up a flare, I'll find it. I literally live on Facebook, so it's probably easy to just get me through that.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Lee. You are amazing and such a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much for sharing all your insights today and taking us through our survival skills. We really appreciate having you on the show.
Oh, thank you. It's been an absolute honor to be on your show.
Oh, thanks so much, Lee. And thank you so much, listeners, for listening to today's episode. We appreciate and love you all. If you've enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, or follow us on your chosen platform. And of course, share it with anyone you can see benefiting from it. For those who are brand new to listening to our show, you can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Podbean, and Spotify. And we're releasing our next episode every single Monday. So we look forward to having you guys tune in then. And thanks again. Have a wonderful week. Bye, guys.